What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with a video that I meant to do actually like a week or two ago, but yeah, things happen, and now I'm finally here to make good on a promise. If you're part of the LaserDisc Forever group on Facebook, you probably have heard of some of the shenanigans that have been going on there regarding my Sony Muse player. It's a pretty long story, but in any case, I've got a podcast that I co-host with a number of killer people from the LDF group, and during one of the podcasts recently, we had a raffle giveaway. Peter Biancardi had ponied up one of his players, Pioneer LDS1, which is actually one of my favorite players as well. We got one in the other room over there. But anyways, he had ponied up one to raise funds to get my player going. And there was a little bit of pushback and everything like that for, e-bagging and whatnot. And, Peter likes to do these things just to have a good time and everything. He did a push-ups challenge once. Buddy Stefan Hamburger won a Evil Dead LaserDisc because of that. And I think Maxine actually participated, and then Moiki, and I think Moiki had a ringer in there though. But anyways, yeah, just fun things to do in the community. And in any way, shape, or form, the whole backstory is this. About a year ago, Peter alerted me to Sony HIL-C2EX, which is a Sony player that is capable of course, regular NTSC LaserDisc playback, and also Muse High Vision, high definition LaserDisc. So I was excited about that, and he had done a lot of experimenting with it, him and Bill DeLeo, and just back and forth, kind of tweaking the players, getting them up and running, and checking them out, and seeing how they stack up against the big dogs like the Pioneer, X9 and X0, and they got a really stunning report card, and it was a reasonable price to get invested in one of these. So I figured, yeah, why not? Let's go for it. So I'll show you some of the video. Actually, I did take some my camera potato phone when it arrived, and it did fire up immediately out of the box. It was packed extremely well. It was all done with the spray foam on the inside, so there was no damage to it in shipping. And it fired up right away. The tray popped out, everything. There was just you just put a disc in, it said stop, and that was it. So there was nothing going on there. So it became this project. Peter had messed around with his multiple units and kind of got them going, adjusting the gain and the focus and everything like that. So with some guidance from both he and Bill, I would just, periodically, if I had a night free or something, I'd crack the top open off of it again and sit there and just, minutely adjust these little pots, and then pop the tray open, put it back in, see what happened, and there was just nothing going on. So Peter had heard someone else saying that they had a power supply issue with it. So he had actually a spare power supply, so he sent me that. And he had a new old stock laser that he hooked me up with, and then I was just going to test it out and buy it off him if it worked. And so I put the laser in, and I just couldn't get it going. So then we tried this power supply thing. So I took the entire power supply out, reinstalled the new power supply, functioned the same, almost exactly the same as before. But then still, I thought maybe just the adjustment was just off, just a tiny bit. So I'd continually tweak it a little bit here and there as time permitted, and always with no joy, trying to get this sucker to spin up. So eventually, and of course this, at this point, everything had happened with the lockdown. Nothing was going on, but I could still do like turn and burn drives and things like that. So Bill offered to take a look at it, and he is just a state away from me, just a couple hours drive. I've gone up to his neck of the woods plenty of times before. So I said, you know what, let's go for it. So he's like, yeah, just come up, drop it off at my house. And I didn't go inside or anything. I just did like a quick run across the street, drop, get back in the car, and out. And he took a look at it, and he couldn't get it to work with either the lasers I had given him. And luckily, he had a handful of other players in various states of repair or disrepair at his pad. So he was able to test out, different boards and combinations. And we came to the conclusion that both of the lasers I had, both the one that came with the unit as it arrived and the new old stock one, were kaput. So So he was able to actually tune the board and everything and get the player working with a different laser. So really, it ended up being all I needed to do was get a new laser, and I was good. I was going to be up and running. So I thought, all right, cool. Well, there was a company out of Miami that has a pile of, not new old stock, but, pulled lasers. I don't know where they pulled it from because they're not available in any other players, especially ones that were marketed here in the States. So not sure where they came from, but I decided to, try one of those, and it was kind of pricey. It was around the price you would pay for a new old stock laser, but I made an offer. He accepted it, and it shipped up to Bill, and he, noticed right away that one, there was like a lot of damage to the laser itself. Even where the serial number was all marked up and everything like that, and there was rust on different spots of it, so it wasn't looking too good. So he put that laser in, and it was able to get a step closer, but it couldn't actually spin up a disc. Like, it could recognize things, but yeah, it was not reading a disc. So I'm like, all right, I guess we're going to send this laser back to this guy. So I said, he supposedly had 4 of them in stock, and I said, well, I'll send this back, and I get a replacement. And I sent it back, and he just refunded my money right away. So I was like, all right, so now if I want a replacement, I'm going to have to buy it again and then hope I don't get the same laser. So meanwhile, Peter thinks that this is the exact same laser. I believe it was Derek from the LDF group had already bought from the same company. So we seem to think that this same junky laser has been making the rounds, and then people are sending it back saying this laser sucks, and the guy just puts it back into stock. So now the idea was, are we going to gamble with these other three lasers that supposedly he has in stock? Am I going to buy it again and then take the risk that I just don't get the exact same one back? So at that same time, I had an issue with my amplifier, my home theater. So I have a 7-channel amp that 2 of the modules apparently went bad. And so it was a costly repair. It cost more than the amp that I invested in the amp itself to fix it. But I love the thing, and I love my stack of gear down there. So I made an executive decision to you just postpone the project, just mothball it. I was like, I didn't want to keep it at Bill's house forever. So I was like, at, whatever time I can make it up there, I'll just come and pick it back up. And then, we'll, after the world starts spinning again, we can resume this project. So I was like, all right, whatever, we're going to back burner it. And then, Peter and Bill and probably a few of the other guys too kind of concocted this raffle scheme, and it was just something fun to do. And the idea was to let's not wait for this to happen and just kind of put it out there. So it was misread by some people as yours truly trying to beg for people to fix their player, and like the idea was like I wasn't giving up on it, but it just wasn't happening right now, and I could have used that. I could definitely and did need that money to fix my amplifier. So it was just shifting priorities. So it was totally their idea just to go ahead and raise these funds and get this going. And then meanwhile, Peter also found a new stash of lasers from China. So he ordered a bunch of those and just fronted the money. So this raffle was like just a fun idea. He's like, I'll put up my LDS one, and it's a great player. And a ton of great people from LDF and 4K ADI both donated. I got some questions. I promised shout outs to everybody who invested and donated. And thanks for all the kind comments and everything. And I know we didn't really explain too well exactly what my circumstances were, so I figured I'd give you a little bit of a backstory there. But long story short, since we had these lasers that we were able to get with the raffle, Peter just donated one of his working lasers in the meantime to get the player up and running. So if you saw the LaserDisc Wolfpack podcast episode 3, they kind of sprung it on me in the middle of the podcast that Bill had gotten my player up and running and working, and it was pretty cool. So I actually got that, and I'll tell you a little bit more anyways. But I got some questions and shout outs. I got to give some shout outs to, of course, the crew. Ryan Cushing also threw into the raffle. Chris Altman from the Wolf Pack threw into the raffle. Bill DeLeo bought a bunch of raffle tickets and then did giveaways and did like trivia contest things. So I think Moikey was one of those recipients, and Scott Perry and Andrew Lyles also were part of the raffle through Bill. And then, of course, Peter invested so much time and money and effort into this project as well. And Trevor Noble from the podcast as well pitched in. But yeah, others, Doug Eaton, you get a shout out. Joey Mabe gets a shout out for sure. Ken Kaler, my man Garth Tiffin, all the way from our neighbors to the north. John Butler, Aaron Garman also gets a shout out. Benjamin Hubner, cheers. Robert Miller, thank you very much for being part of this crazy event. Oh, Jeff Roby, a close friend of the Wolfpack, and Matthew Kittler, a relatively new LDFer, but some cool Star Trek stuff in his. I'm pretty sure he was involved in some Star Trek like fan production stuff. So I'll have to see if I can find a link to that and point that out. But I did also get some questions. Jason Seacrest, thank you for joining in the fun. And his question was, is it okay to use the stretch setting on my TV? And if the answer is use your stretch setting to watch anamorphic DVDs, then yeah. If the question is, can I use my stretch setting to watch my 4:3 LEDs, then the answer is no. You cannot. You cannot. To quote Minnie Driver from Grosse Point Blank, you can't use the stretch setting. Brian Michaud said, good luck with the Muse player. I'd like to shout out Sega Retro Revival on Instagram. And that's Sega_Retro_Revival on Instagram. So there you go. Thanks for joining in, Brian. And Adam Medberry wanted to know, what's your favorite animated film? And it's tough because there's Disney animated films, like kind of family-friendly animated films. Yeah, and then there's Japanese anime. So, I mean, I think if I had to be completely honest with myself and choose one film, it would have to be Akira. And if there was a runner-up, it would probably be a tie, of course more anime, between Macross Do You Remember Love and Dirty Pair the Movie, aka Project Eden. If I had a favorite Disney movie, it would be Beauty and the Beast. So I got that sorted. But I was trying to think if there was any outliers or any like kind of things I'm forgetting about, but heavy metal obviously is kind of near and dear to my heart as well. But no, I'm definitely going with Akira as the, top of the heap. And Alan Lawrence, cheers, wanted to know, what is my favorite 90s action flick? And favorite 90s action flick, one, it's tough not to go HK, just because, nothing, as great as the American action flicks of those times were, I don't think anything blew my mind to the extent that my mind was exploded by what was coming out of Hong Kong at the time. So I would have to go with a tie between John Woo's Hard Boiled and Jackie Chan's Drunken Master 2. Those two both, kicked my ass in completely different ways. For American stuff, it'd be tough. I'd probably have to fight myself between a few, James Cameron, Terminator 2 is, pretty tough to beat. But in terms of like fight action and stuff, there's really not as much in it. That's just more spectacle action and chase scenes and stuff like that. There might be something a little bit more obvious that I'm forgetting, but yeah, definitely Drunken Master 2 and Hard Boiled. Let's see, Christopher Arts. Cheers, my friend. His question is, other than Evil Dead, or is it Evil Dead 2, are there any other releases that came out on a red tinted disc? And yes, indeed, Elite Entertainment came up with the Evil Dead blood red disc. Do I have it? Is it around here? This guy. Here, I'll show you. That is the blood red disc, which is wicked cool. And shout outs to Vinny Boncaleri, who hooked us up with a bunch of us in LDF with new old stock Evil Dead discs. This was actually an original sealed copy from Elite Entertainment that was in his warehouse. He hooked me up with. So other red discs, the only other ones I know that are similar are the burned sides on CRV recordable discs. As far as colored discs go, the only other ones I know of are the gold discs. Then there's a few different. There's like actual like gold discs, and there's just kind of yellowy plastic. PDO UK used gold for a lot of their PAL releases, a lot of their CD video releases. So those have a lot of gold. There's a kind of, some have said it's green, but it's essentially gold. Toxic Avenger LD, and there's speaking of Drunken Master 2, that's actually a gold disc. Yeah, LaserDisc company came out with a lot of HK releases were split into two for the rental market. So you can get twice the amount of rental fee for each single movie. But then they would reissue them, and they all have this kind of similar packaging. No images from the film or poster art or anything like that. But they would reissue them on these single disc releases, but with a gold disc. And yeah, you can, if you look at it in the right light, it can look kind of greenish, so I can understand the Toxic Avenger thing. And there are also a number of Japanese rental discs that are also gold like that too. But as far as red itself, I don't know of any other proper red discs other than that Evil Dead 2. So if I find out more info, I will report back in the future. And Keith Mullen also said, your 80s series was great. Do you think we'll see some 90s top 10s this year? And yeah, that was a lot of fun. A little crazy, and I kind of played some mental gymnastics in order to fit a lot of my favorite 80s films into all these different lists. So I did a ton. It was like, I don't think it was fully 20, but it was getting close to there, of different top 10, genre films and, kids movies and teen movies and this and animated films and fantasy films and everything. It was a blast. It was a good time. And, I like mixing it up every once in a while and choosing some things that are, surprising to me even sometimes. So it was fun. It was great commenting with everybody on those. So yeah, would definitely love to do a 90s series. In fact, I had planned for it a little bit around the same time, and I do have that in the back pocket. So I'll, maybe this year I can get that going. So yeah, thanks for the questions, everybody. And again, thanks for taking part of the raffle and by those actions enabling the completion of the Sony project much sooner than it would have been otherwise. Because who knows? I'm pretty patient once I kind of backburner something, so it could have been something where I was like, let's just put that in a corner for a couple of years or so and then move on it. So it's fantastic that I was able to actually get it. So I mentioned before the Wolfpack podcast, it was after we did the raffle, and the winner was the one, the only Jared Brown. So cheers to Jared for joining in, and congratulations on winning the LDS1. Hopefully you are enjoying it. Jared's got a video that he dropped when he went to go pick it up at Peter's house, so I'll show you that quick.
Hello. Hey Sam, just wanted to say I'm glad I could contribute just in the little bit I could to getting you up and working with your Muse player, and just couldn't believe when Peter told me that I won the LDS1. Just what an amazing player. So this will be my 4th player now. All Pioneers, sorry, no Quasars. Just thrilled to win, and can't wait to see more videos you put out. I've been checking pretty much every video that you put out, and you give so much to the community, so you deserve it to have a working player. Thanks so much for everything you do, Sam.
So yeah, thanks Jared. Thanks for all the kind words, and I hope you enjoy that player for many years to come. It's a great unit. So we did the raffle, and then the guy surprised me with the fact that my player was fixed. So I actually did another turn and burn. I got in the car the very next day. We usually record those on Friday nights, the podcast. And on a Saturday, I drove, to Bill's house, and then I had to drive to a couple other destinations to drop some things off for my wife. So it was like a good 5.5 hours of just sheer driving that day. But yeah, I pulled up right next to Bill's house and let him know I was there, popped the trunk from the inside of the car, and he came out and dropped the goods in the back, and he came back home. So I've been playing with the player ever since. Part of the reason I didn't get this video put up in time is because I've been messing around with that and kind of changing my rig a little bit, and reinstalling the amplifier and setting up some speakers and stuff like that. So it's been a lot of stuff keeping me a little too distracted from making videos, so I apologize on that front. But yeah, so the player, which we'll show you a little bit, it's gorgeous stuff. It's got the wood paneling. I'm a sucker for the wood paneling, but unlike a lot of Pioneer stuff, Sony usually was a little bit more, keen on, brushed aluminums and champagne kind of faces. Pioneer did that a lot in Japan, but not here in the States. It was either, a kind of matte black finish usually, or, just plastic, or, a glossy Urushi finish. And then they would throw some nifty wood paneling on the sides for some of their elite players or reference level players. But yeah, I've always been a sucker for the Sony design, and I'm a Sony guy at heart because my first player was a Sony MDP-333, and in spite of all of the hatred just dolloped upon that player over the years, like I wouldn't have this channel if it wasn't for that Sony MDP-333. It's as my kind of career into LaserDisc has continued, like that's the seed. I can't disrespect it. It's given me so more hours of entertainment than I invested into it, and it completely earned its place in my lofty list of players, my favorite players of all time, and it still works to this very day. I was just watching Cliffhanger on it not too long ago. Speaking of Cliffhanger, we'll get to that in a second. So I got the new player back home. It was great, being able to see it spin up, because it's the exact same player I was tweaking with night after night after night, but to see it actually come to life and spin up a disc was pretty amazing. And so I tried out a few things, and I hooked it up. I hooked it up through my Ferrugia NRS at first, but that's been starting to flake out. Ferrugia's have a lot of power supply issues, so I've been getting that going. So I am going to get onto the eval board train. Stuff that's going on within the LD collector circuit to try and get the best comb filter and processing going on. So I have a DVDO as well, so I actually hooked up the player to both and set up Video Essentials to calibrate for both, and was just doing a lot of testing and playing discs and stuff. One of the ones I was watching a lot was True Romance, which I think I'd gotten my original copy from either Suncoast or Columbia House from the Laserdisc Club, but I foolishly got rid of it when I was kind of thinning out LDs after I had upgraded to DVD, and it is actually a great DVD that I won't get rid of, the special edition of True Romance with all the deleted scenes and commentary and all that stuff. But I got rid of the LD, which is the director's cut or the unrated cut. And that was the film. Yeah, I was introduced to the film through that, and I really should have held on to it. But Kevin Kobos, the Good Squid, had a couple sales, and I availed myself of some discs that he had, and he had actually a decent amount of American discs, and I love buying American discs from him because they're usually minty. So yeah, that was one of them, and it just happened to show up around the exact same time I got the player back, so I'm like, let me use that, because films like Fifth Element or eye candy type films, they look good on every player for the most part. So I wanted to take something that was a little bit murkier and dimmer and had the potential to look like mud on any given weaker player. And there's so many bits like inside Dennis Hopper's Caravan that are just kind of murky. A lot of it's shot really murky, and of course there's some big bright bits when they move out to LA, but a lot of it's kind of playing up the Detroit vibe of it being dark and grim and snowy and everything like that. So it's a great film to actually test for that. So I was watching on that, and I was like really impressed with some of the the detail and the layers and everything. So when I picked up the player as well, Bill had a Sony decoder that he was sending to Peter, because Peter decided he wanted to get back into Muse. He was using the Sonys as just an NTSC only player for a little bit, but I think something changed his mind, and he wanted to get back into Muse. So Bill had a decoder and a disc of Cliffhanger to send to him. So he said, well, since you're taking this player, if you want, you could borrow the decoder and Cliffhanger for a little bit. I had one Muse disc already, which was Legends of the Fall, which Peter had given me just in case I could get the player to start up so I could test Muse capabilities. It's the only Muse title I think that anybody knows that has laser rot, or at least is a candidate for laser rot, and so that copy is a little bit rotted. It's still totally watchable, but so he's like, well, yeah, why don't you check it out and actually see what it can do, and then send it along to Peter. So it took a while for me to integrate it into my rig and get everything up and running. Just because, cables and everything, you had to have RGB HV cables, and I had to have, so I wanted to like hook it up into my system, and then also have this Muse player hooked up to test it, but then not have to tear my entire rig apart to then take it back out and mail it off to Peter. So I finally, it took about a week or something, but I finally got it all worked out, and one Saturday night, I fired up Cliffhanger, and yeah, I totally loved it. It was kind of what I was expecting from Muse. It's funny how a lot of times when people watch Muse discs, they're disappointed because it doesn't look exactly like Blu-ray. And I kind of fell in love with it because it looks like LaserDisc. It doesn't look, like Blu-ray or something digital at all. So that was so cool. It looked like LaserDisc, but cleaner, less chroma noise, aliasing. It's like all of the kind of things that can be a detriment to LaserDisc viewing were essentially gone. So yeah, I mean, of course, text and anything like that are rock solid. The kind of mountainscapes from Cliffhanger were pretty amazing, and that film's never looked that great on standard NTSC LaserDisc. So it was really cool seeing all these kind of mountain vistas and everything. Of course, the stuff that's on stages looks extra stagey, but yeah, that's that's always been the case with that film. But yeah, it's not a very super colorful or vibrant film, but sometimes those those red helicopters and everything come and they just pop. But yeah, again, it was just what I was hoping it would be. It's like LaserDisc, but better. It's like LaserDisc but HD. It's 1035i, so it's a real interesting format. Like when I fired it up through my DVD-O, because it's 16:9, but it's not quite 1080. So it had kind of like a black bar on the top and on the side. So I had to like zoom it in progressively, incrementally, just a little bit to fill the entire screen. But yeah, it looked fantastic. It was really cool. So then I threw on Legends of the Fall, which isn't one of my favorite movies. Edward Zwick film from the mid 90s with Brad Pitt and Aidan Quinn and of course Anthony Hopkins. And yeah, it just kind of wore on my nerves when I saw it in the theater, and I hadn't really sat down and watched the entire thing since. So I figured, well, if I'm going to do it, I might as well do it on Muse. And so that was the one I mentioned before. It had a little bit of rot, but it really wasn't too bad, and it was totally watchable. And in fact, again, that kind of pinpointed for me like interiors, like the kind of family house there. It's it's essentially it's not a log cabin, but it is a very kind of wooden house, lots of deep, rich browns, and it could easily be murky on standard NTSC, but on Muse, yeah, you could really see the layers of the house and the the depth. And again, detail and everything was fantastic, and highlights around the edges of people that are spotlit a certain way looked crystal clear, razor sharp. It was great. It was like LaserDisc, but the way you always wanted LaserDisc to be, like the next level of clarity or high def. And it's really a shame it didn't take off when it did. That would have made. I'm surprised James Cameron didn't release The Abyss on it, because that was part of the reason for him doing his director's pan and scan versions from his Super 35 films, was that he thought sound was pretty much spot on in terms of home theater in the 90s, but the video wasn't quite there yet. So yeah, if High Vision had been available here in the States, or just taken off even a little bit more in Japan, like, oh man, it's almost a shame that there's not more titles. Of course, Muse collectors always say that the demo discs are where the format really shines. Stuff shot on video or whatever, and those can fool you into thinking you're watching a Blu-ray. But film scans were still, saddled with the scan technology of that early to mid 90s period. So some of the later titles look a little bit better. But that said, I don't really mind that at all, because again, the goal isn't to get it looking like Blu-ray. It's essentially scanned from a similar time period as the standard NTSC copy. So it's like that, but a little bit better. So yeah, it's like 100% what I was hoping it would be. So it was great. So I watched the rest of that. The only thing I didn't try out is the Dance 3+1 audio, and it's amazing. All this stuff is just pumped out from one cable to the decoder, and the decoder, of course, splits it up into numerous ways. And the player also has an optical out, which I've used for my regular NTSC discs. But yeah, a lot of the discs you can either have regular 2-channel audio that you can decode into surround sound. So that's what I did. I just ran the optical cable out of the player and then just decoded into ProLogic surround. But they do have a discrete 3+1 dance signal on there as well, which is a mono surround. But it's pretty cool. The only thing is it doesn't have anything in it for bass management. It's not 3.1, but it's like a front soundstage, left, center, right. and then a mono surround. So it's like Prologic essentially, but the center is actually discrete, and there's no LFE or anything like that. So you need something to do bass management, assuming you have small surrounds or something like that, or if you don't want to send all the bass to your main speakers. So that's a little hurdle if you're getting into Muse, you got to dig into. So when I buy my own decoder, I'm going to have to worry about that later. But I just really wanted to check out the video on my projector and get a feel for it. So I did, and had a blast with it. And then, of course, I mailed off Cliffhanger and the decoder to Peter, so that's installed in his facility now. So now I'm on the hunt for a decoder. I got to pick one of those up, and then maybe I'll pick up a few discs here and there. There's a few titles that are Muse that I certainly wouldn't mind having, and I don't think they're the most expensive ones or the most sought after ones, so that's kind of my favorite too. So maybe every once in a while I'll go crazy and pick one up or something like that. But again, the player is really nice on NTSC discs, so that was part of the reason for getting it. So in the meantime, I'm going to be enjoying spinning those up on my system. So now I just got to get this eval board thing, go in and tweak the signal chain a little bit and go from there. But I've been having a great time with it. So thanks again for those guys, especially Bill and Peter, for putting the time and effort into making this thing a reality and doing the work on it and arranging the shipment for the parts and everything like that. And then, of course, everyone else that's part of the Wolfpack for hosting this event and donating to it. And then again, everybody who pitched in for the raffle on LDF and 4K ADI. You guys rock. And cheers for making a dream come true. So that's just a little bit of a Muse report. And I figured I'd report back to you guys what my experiences with the player have been so far, the Sony HIL C2EX. Super glad to have it. And like I said before, my love for the MDP333 runs deep, so this is great. Like, I feel like I've kind of come full circle. I've gotten like the big daddy to that. I had an MDP 800 for a while, which I also absolutely loved. But I knew somebody who had one, and they were looking for a replacement, and so I knew it was going to a good home. And I did sell that. But I feel like I've kind of like come back full circle. I've come back home into the Sony camp. I mean, I'm still going to keep all my other Panasonic and ProScan Pioneer clones and the Pioneers proper as well. I'm going to keep the fleet going. The Quasar, obviously, never getting rid of the Quasar. But it's a great player. So thanks again for everybody who pitched in questions, and hopefully I got everybody their shout outs. If I missed anybody, let me know, and I'll give you another shout out in a future video. Thanks for checking this out, and thanks for watching this channel and the podcast and all that sort of stuff, and all the commentary and feedback and everything like that. I really appreciate it and love chatting with you guys. So cheers. I'll be back with a new LaserDisc pickups video, because I got 2 boxes of things. I showed some things on, actually I got more than 2 boxes. I did show some things on the Wolfpack podcast part 4, but I've got way more that I wasn't able to show on that. So it'll be a fun one. So I'll be back with part 1. I'm splitting it into 2 because I got some boxes. So it'll be like single discs and then boxes. So that's coming up shortly. So cheers, everybody.